The global market for blow-molded plastics was expanding at a pace not witnessed since the 1960s. Within the walls of the modest family home, Darlene was preparing for a pivotal moment in her career. Her project, humorously titled "What Is Up with All the Crypt Keepers," was about to be presented to the Wellman board of directors. Robin, her supervisor, had promised to pitch Darlene's innovative ideas to the high-level executives, and she had even invited Darlene to watch the proceedings via a video conference call. As Darlene observed the screen, she could not help but make a witty remark about how nice it was that the distinguished elderly gentlemen of the board still had a comfortable place to gather, referring to them as the patriarchs of the industry. The meeting commenced, and Robin began her report with great enthusiasm. She was very happy to inform the board that production at the Landford plant had increased by 20%. She credited the team for coming up with several exciting new concepts. Robin, true to her word about giving credit where it was due, suddenly called upon Darlene. She invited her to hop onto the call and explain the ideas to the board herself. Darlene was struck with immediate panic. She had not expected to speak and was certainly not dressed for a corporate presentation. She whispered in a frantic tone that this was what one got for having ideas, comparing herself to the bride of Frankensock. Addressing the board with a nervous smile, Darlene thanked Robin for the unexpected opportunity. She asked for a couple of minutes to gather her notes and stepped away from the camera in a state of total shock. She realized with horror that she was wearing nothing but casual sweatpants. Her sister, Harris, tried to offer a bit of blunt comfort, suggesting that the board would be too distracted by the crushing poverty of their surroundings to notice that Darlene looked like a slob. With only 2 minutes to spare, Darlene knew she had to change her clothes and find a way to make her environment look more professional. The house became a scene of organized chaos. Darlene declared an emergency, insisting they find a spot in the house that made her look less poor. They considered Mark's room, noting that he had decorated it well enough to look almost middle class. They decided on the area by the fireplace, as the family agreed that wealthy people always seem to have those. To enhance the intellectual atmosphere, they began piling books on the mantelpiece to make Darlene look smart. Becky, however, protested the removal of the books, joking that she needed them because she was studying how to marry rich, which she considered to be much less work than a career. As they hurried, a singing mechanical fish on the wall began to play a cheerful tune about being happy. Dan, Darlene's father, had nailed it there, and now they could not get the thing to shut off. It was motion-activated, and despite their best efforts to silence it, the fish continued its performance. Amidst the noise, Dan offered Darlene a nice sweater to wear. Darlene's mother, Louise, ushered everyone out of the room, reminding them that Darlene was pretending to have ideas and needed a proper costume. The countdown began, and Darlene prepared to go live. In 3, 2, 1, she addressed the board once more. She apologized for the slight delay, claiming she was at her lake house and had been caught a little off guard. She spoke about her roots and how her time working on the production line gave her unique insight into worker productivity. She explained that she had asked the workers what would motivate them, and they suggested small gestures like coffee gift cards or a pinball machine in the break room. Just as she was concluding her speech with a message about showing workers that the company cared, the mechanical fish began to sing again. Flustered, Darlene quickly handed the floor back to Robin and ended her participation. As soon as the camera was off, Darlene's composure collapsed. She told Becky she could not breathe and that her heart was pounding as if it might jump out of her chest. Feeling dizzy, she feared she was having a heart attack. Becky immediately suggested calling 911, but Darlene refused, worried about the cost of an ambulance. She begged Becky to drive her to the hospital, but Becky admitted her license had expired. In a moment of high tension and dark humor, Becky agreed to drive anyway, noting that since Darlene was dying, the expired license was the least of their worries. Meanwhile, at the local retirement home, Jackie and an old friend were watching television. They had been staring at the same program for 5 minutes, and Jackie complained that the story was going nowhere. Her friend suggested it might be an infomercial, but Jackie was skeptical that a show featuring Chuck Norris working out could be anything else. The two engaged in a playful argument about strength, leading to a friendly but competitive arm wrestling match. Back at the hardware store, Ben was facing his own set of challenges. He had recently taken over his late father's business and felt completely overwhelmed. He admitted to Dan that he had never even worked in retail and had no idea how to run the store. His only hope was a retired employee named Mac, but Dan informed him with a heavy heart that Mac had unfortunately passed away. Dan's own day had not been much better. He had been fired from his construction job because a contractor viewed him as a liability after a near accident with a forklift. Dan complained that the heavy machinery was supposed to beep when backing up, but he had not heard it over the noise of the construction site. Louise suggested that Dan might need to get his hearing checked, noting that hearing aids were quite expensive. The conversation shifted to a potential solution for everyone's problems. Ben needed help at the hardware store, and Dan was currently out of work. Although Dan was hesitant to trade his construction tools for a store apron, he eventually agreed to help Ben for a few weeks until a permanent replacement could be found. The next day, Darlene returned home from the hospital. She informed the family that she had not suffered a heart attack, but rather a severe panic attack. She was terrified that the board had noticed her breakdown and that it would ruin her future and the future of her children. The family, in their characteristic way, tried to lighten the mood with humor, reminding Darlene that they never really believed she had a chance anyway. Darlene thanked them for the laugh, even if she knew they were being somewhat serious. Robin checked in on Darlene and shared the good news that the board had not noticed the incident. Feeling guilty for the pressure she had placed on Darlene, Robin gave her a gift certificate for a professional massage at a high-end spa. While discussing the spa, Jackie and Becky looked at the brochure, confused by terms like Reiki and Shiatsu. Darlene, however, felt a fresh wave of anxiety. The thought of being in such a fancy place, surrounded by confident and successful people, triggered another panic attack. She sought help from a psychiatrist, who helped her realize that she felt like an imposter. Darlene confessed that her new success was threatening her identity. She felt like a fraud and was scared that she would lose everything. The doctor encouraged her to rewrite her personal narrative, to start believing that she was capable and deserving of her success. He also prescribed some anti-anxiety medication to help her through the transition. At the hardware store, Dan was surprisingly enjoying himself. He found that his years of experience made him an expert in the eyes of the customers. However, tension arose between him and Ben. Ben felt threatened by Dan's expertise and the fact that the customers preferred Dan's advice over his own. After a heated argument where Ben tried to assert his authority as the boss, Dan decided to quit. However, by the time evening arrived, they both realized they needed each other. Dan apologized for his stubbornness, and Ben admitted he was still learning. They agreed to make the arrangement permanent, with Dan officially joining the team. Back at home, Harris was dealing with her own heartbreak. She had been seeing a wealthy young man named Josh, but he had stopped returning her calls. Mark revealed that he had seen Josh at his parents' house, proving that Josh was ghosting her. Encouraged by Becky, Harris went to Josh's house to demand an explanation. She confronted him, telling him that he was not as special as he thought, and that she deserved better than someone who was not man enough to say goodbye. Though it hurt, Harris felt a sense of pride in standing up for herself. Mark, too, was struggling with the weight of the world. He had been experiencing stomach aches, which the doctor attributed to chronic stress caused by the constant flow of information about the pandemic. Darlene realized that in her own anxiety, she had been sharing too much with Mark. They agreed to stop focusing on the negatives and instead look for the positive stories in the world. As the family gathered for dinner, Dan arrived with a surprise. He had purchased a pair of certified pre-owned hearing aids from a pawn shop. He demonstrated how he could use a small remote to adjust the volume, or even turn it off entirely when the family started arguing. With a smile, he turned the volume down and asked Jackie how her day had been, finally finding a bit of peace in the middle of the beautiful chaos of their lives.